Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern. Join me as I invite experts and friends to discuss a range of topics, from the factual and practical to the mystical and magical. Consider this your virtual happy hour filled with lively, authentic, and meaningful conversations meant to inform, inspire, and ignite your curiosity. Whether you are very real or super woo, this podcast is just for you. Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern, and I am with the beautiful and gorgeous Jullia Weigert. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did. Yay.
Okay.
Hello.
Who's originally from Germany, but apparently lives in Switzerland. So it is, about 12 o'clock here in Chicago. So what time is it there?
7 p.m.
Wow. Yeah. So this took a little bit of coordinating to get us together in the same sort of awake time. So I appreciate you doing this with me. So Jullia has a great podcast called Sacred Travel Podcast, and then a whole website and company called Soul Wisdom. And I found you, I believe, through just my own search for earth chakras, because I don't know if I was listening to something. You might have been on Jocelyn Starfeather's YouTube. Do you know who she is?
So I think you actually found me through the New Earth Network, but I had Jocelyn on the podcast, and I had her on a summit that I did 1 year ago.
Yeah.
Gaia Myths.
I think that's what it was.
Yes. Oh, okay. So it was back then already.
Yeah. So something that you said or she said, sparked my interest, obviously, because what I do is chakras. And I'm going to get to the episode that I just listened of yours because it made me giggle, because you use the same language that I do, which is no surprise. However, I'm guided to figure out how to explain chakras in a variety of ways. And I really either knew and had forgotten that the earth itself has these sites that are chakras. I'm like, oh, I want to find out more about that. Mm-hmm. And then I found you and started listening to your show and your podcast. And it's just amazing how everything and everyone is connected in this realm. And so, I was just listening to episode 19 of yours with your friend. You guys went to, I'm going to say this wrong, the Chatra?
Yes, in France.
Yes, in France. And it's where I guess the idea that I now see on your website about the Magdalene mandala came to you in a dream. Mm-hmm. And part of that show, you discuss more about that, and we'll get into that. So I would just like you to tell the listeners maybe more about yourself. Of course, my question is, how did you get into this work? I know you came from corporate, but was there an inspirational event that happened, or did this just sort of evolve over time with you? And explain what it is that you do now.
Thank you. I love the visual behind you for those who got a chance to watch this at some point with the chakras and the elephant.
Yeah. So of course, this is my office, but it's also my workout room. So you can see like this tapestry kind of covers up my elliptical trainer. And then behind it is this beautiful elephant. But I like kind of how the fabric kind of morphs into that. Yeah, but if I took it off, then you just see this ugly machine behind me. So I cover it up. But then you can see my dog too.
Oh, yay, cutie.
Yeah. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah. So how did I get into this? That's always such a vast question, and as you said, so I had a life in corporate, which I guess was quite successful in a way, what people consider successful. And it's been kind of funny because when I think back, for me, like work life has always been easy, like always in the flow. And since I changed careers and was now that I'm really like asked to surrender and trust the process, I feel like reversed.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, being on the entrepreneurial journey. And, I feel that all of us, because we are these spiritual beings, but it's just this big part when we live life, depending on the environment and what we get into, we forget and we learn stuff that we need to unlearn again. And so retrospective, there is always, of course, events, and I guess the listeners can probably attest to that, and maybe you as well, where you were guided by spirit, like we were given the clues or the messages, but we would just not understand. And for me, the way that it manifested, I guess, from very early on was that I was very intuitive. I was feeling a lot of things. I knew a lot of things, but I could not necessarily tell people where I knew it from because I just knew.
Yeah. Like you know.
Yeah, source or resource, especially when you are a child. And sometimes, it comes across a little bit like, who is this young girl who pretends to know everything? But I kind of just knew. And that led to, because my environment wasn't really prone and open to what my world was, I adopted in the way over time and over decades that I became really sick. And so it was through a health journey, actually, that I got back on track in a way into my spiritual path, and the medical sector not really being able to tell me what was happening with me because everybody told me that I was fine and I was in hospitals all the time. And at one point I just decided, if you guys can't figure it out, I'm going to figure it out myself. And that's what I did, and brought myself back on track, and eventually out of the corporate, which was another process, of course, in itself. Once the physical was healed in a way, it felt like, the channel was opened again, and my body, I came back to my own body, I came back to my own feelings, and the journey of trusting myself and trusting that what I feel and that what I know is the truth, not necessarily the truth with the capital T, but it's my truth. And I am going to stand for that, and I'm going to express it in the way that I want. And then there was obviously also travel involved. So I've been always very drawn to ancient civilizations, like all things Egypt, all things Greece, Greek. And, in Europe, we do have a lot of and we do have very old stones. So there's lots of sites and ruins and stone circles and stuff that you can go to. And that also led to a big part of me remembering who I am and how I fit in the greater tapestry, not just with the earth, but actually with the entire universe. And that's what inspired me to do the work that I'm doing now. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. There's so many people, I'm sure you've heard similar stories that, some people call it a dark night of the soul. And I have a whole take on that. And my feeling is it doesn't always have to happen. And however you describe your awakening journey can be that. But it just doesn't resonate with me in terms of, I feel like it takes people into a negative space. It is a push space for sure. It's uncomfortable. It is scary for a lot of people. And it is like the depths of despair or darkness within themselves. I understand that. And at the same time, when you're going through it, you don't know. You just feel like crap, right? But then when you come out of it, you can say, oh, that was a reset, or I understand now why, this happened and now it put me on this path. But again, to me, it's like, for whatever reason, hearing Dark Night of the Soul almost sounds like really scary, like devilish energy to me, I guess, But again, to some people who are going through that, it must feel like their body is literally being taken over by something they don't even recognize that is themselves. So I totally get it. In that same way, I was going to ask you, just listening to you now, my intuition was nudging me. Were you getting sicker or more unhealthy when you were working and or trying to decide if the corporate life was the life for you? Or did one have nothing to do with the other, and it was only when you got healthier did you then recognize that the corporate world wasn't really your path? So did your job make you sick? You know what I mean?
So at one point it did. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, it did. But it was, I wouldn't say that, it was the life in corporate. It was really that particular job with that particular company in the way that it was structured. And again, I was losing myself completely, trying or feeling I am, almost like the martyr in a way, trying to save the world, whereas you yourself just feel like, excuse my language, a piece of shit, and nobody cares about it. And that's when I realized, okay, something's got to change. And then I quit that job back then and just threw myself into the unknown as well. But then I got another job, which was actually what I would consider my dream job in the corporate world. That was really good. I loved it. And
What kind of job?
I was working at a jewelry company, like big international jewelry company.
Fun.
And I've always been in project management and process management. And I was traveling the world for the projects. I had to do with a lot of different cultures. I got to, see how, it's funny how now I feel that so many things that I did in corporate set me up for doing the work that I'm doing now in a different way, and being able also to structure myself, being able to hold the circle, facilitate the events, the pilgrimages that I'm doing, because I was organizing events. So there is similarities in a way. Mm-hmm. But still, so I like the job, but still, it wasn't that I would come out of the closet with my spiritual nature in a way. And I feel that this is so, I can feel this with so many women these days, is that it's hard in these corporate structures to fully be you in that feminine nature, and also with the full permission of your spiritual essence to come out. Mm-hmm. And that was then kind of like the straddle that I had until, again, it always comes back to ourselves. I decided for myself, like, this is it, like, this is me. And I can't, flip the switch off or on when I'm in the office or when I leave the office. So this is me, and you're going to get the full package or not. And that's when I started really opening up also, and not just, consider myself spiritual when I was doing my meditation or I was doing my practice, but literally, and that's what I call the priestess path as well, is infusing and allowing every action of your life to just, be a co-creation with spirit.
I was working my ass off, years ago as well. And it makes me sad to think about that person that I was then, knowing what I know now. But you just said it, everything I learned then has for sure helped me now, tenacity and how to be organized. And what I didn't recognize then, which is what I recognize now, and I'm sure that you can attest to this, is when you're in an office setting and everybody just got these different personalities, how to protect your boundaries and not take that energy. Like, before I knew how empathic I was, I would just get wigged out, and then it would transfer just because of my upbringing, just like fear equaled anger, or fear equaled like shutting down. And so in an office environment, that's not easy to do. Like, you can't get angry at your boss, you get fired, and you can't shut down and crawl into a hole because you have to get your work done, right? But I just recognize feeling all that stuff, and then how to also just find my own self. It's really difficult. But, for men too, men are on this path that we're on, hopefully more. And, I love the whole, rah-rah women, of course. But the goal is, and I feel like you and I are on this path to hopefully inspire people to live their authentic selves into all of the places and ages and stages of their life, and the permission to be spiritual at work, or to, express your feminine side or your masculine side, no matter your gender or how you identify. I'm hopeful that more and more that's going to happen all over the place. Like, no matter where you are, there you are, right? I think that's a book.
Yeah.
I think it is.
That's a title for a book.
I think it is a book. I think I have to look that up. Okay, so I listened to your episode with your friend, and you guys were, traveling to through France. And then you described this dream that you had that inspired part of the work that you're doing now. But I had written in my notes here, you gave me this reading, and we'll get to that too. But you said it in your conversation with your friend. I'm blanking out on her name right now. Like a dear friend of, you kind of always knew before you knew. Like, you had described that you always made dots and connected those dots into a picture, right? And the whole reason I'm doing what I'm doing is literally to connect dots, right? Just the fact that I'm meeting with you is because several dots connected that brought me to you. And as a child, I would always draw 3D boxes and then circles around the boxes.
I love
and it wasn't just you that told me about Metatron, but the minute I saw Metatron's cube, I'm like, I've been drawing this my whole life. and flowers and spirals. And it's just like, it was obviously in me before I knew what it was. And I would just doodle all of the time the same symbols. And nobody believes this now, but I was a secondary math education major. I was really good at math. You know, if you don't use it, you lose it. But I loved formulas and loved the whole mathematical equation side of things, and also very artistic. And I've got children who are both of these things as well. But it just fascinated me when you said, like, you always did this. And you're like, now you know kind of why, you know, when you're on this journey. Okay. So I wanted to find out if you wanted to talk more about that, because it seemed like that trip was a big catalyst for the work you're doing now with your circles.
It is. Yeah. Thank you. So it's, you know, I also work a lot with the avatars of the Marys, of the Magdalenes, consider myself, as of that lineage. And maybe that's also why I probably speak more to the feminine side, because my clients are female. That's where my experience comes from. But no matter, of course, we don't want to exclude anyone. So, and I felt very drawn to France and visit places where Mary Magdalene and what I call the Magdalene consciousness is anchored. And again, with what you said about, you know, the drawings and the symbols. So symbolism is such a big thing in the spiritual remembrance journey, I would say, because we are receiving these clues and keys, whether this is numbers or symbols from everywhere, constantly, all the time. And this sparks some remembrance or some energetic frequency match inside, where there's a bell ringing in your body. It's like, hey, I know this. And maybe not from childhood, maybe from another lifetime or whatever. And so I went with Jana, my friend, on a personal pilgrimage to some of the sites in France. And Chartres is, I mean, it's special because it's also this super big cathedral, and it is part of one of the biggest pilgrimage ways in Europe that is called the Camino de Santiago.
Right.
Which again, when we dig deeper, it is not just a Christian pilgrimage way, but it used to be and that ties in with the chakras. So again, I'm jumping around, but we're connecting the dots here. It's part of a layout of a bigger map of places and energetic vortexes where cathedrals were in the Christian era, then built on top, but they were actually used by pagan traditions or worship. Then there was rituals taking place because they were dedicated to different planets and different chakra points. So there were initiations that would take place, and people would go to the places to have one of their chakras basically blown open and receive the teachings that they would hold in their own body that would come through this chakra that were also anchored into this planet, the Earth. And so one of them is Chartres Cathedral. And for whoever has a chance to visit, it's really stunning. And they also keep some relics of, I think it's the cloak of Mother Mary, supposedly, that is there. So anyways, the energy that is present is super, super strong. And there is this femininity while at the same time, and that's what I call the dragon energy, is this primordial life force that is running through the earth and that comes up in these structures and is amplified in these cathedral structures that are just, beauty and awe in itself. But it's also houses of frequency. Like if you look at it in the way that, the windows are made and the patterns that they create, it's all frequency and motion.
So two things. So like the way you're describing this cathedral, or a number of them that I'm sure that you visited, it almost sounds as intentional as the pyramid. So it sounds to me like, obviously we have vortexes here in the States, right? So like in Sedona, for example.
Everywhere,
Right. And then there's also, I guess, energetic vortexes within pyramids. We can talk about that. But then this particular cathedral, or I think I just read something about Notre Dame, when it was being rebuilt after the fire.
Yeah.
Found like these catacombs underneath that are apparently doorways to portals. Have you heard anything about that? Yeah. But we're really quick. And then the other part was I was listening to something Andrew McCarthy, who is an actor you may or may not know here. He walked the Camino with his son and wrote a book about it. But I thought it started and ended in Spain.
Well, that's what is known today. There is a place there, and that's where the Basilic of, well, Santiago, would that be?
Because it ends out, like it spits out at a cathedral, I want to say, too.
It does. It does, which is also part of the bigger layout. So, and this is what's known today through Christian tradition, what people walk nowadays. But there is, different parts and they go through all Europe. So even there is parts going through Germany and Switzerland, and there's a part close by that is part of it. And you will always see those shells that are the symbol for the Camino. But the shell, like what is the shell? It's actually the symbol of Aphrodite, of Venus, of the feminine. So if we peel back all the layers, what it is, it's a mirror of the Milky Way. So you're walking the Milky Way, the way of the stars.
Wow.
And that's what it is. And a pilgrimage in itself there is the outer pilgrimage that we do, and we traverse these realms. But what happens is that we go on a journey inward, right? Get to know ourselves. So the catacombs, and under all of these structures, there is either caves, or they were built on top of caves, or there is catacombs that they built, or the crypts. And this is, later on where they buried people, but the actual meaning and the reason why they built it in the earth is because this is where the initiations would take place. This is where the energy is the strongest. And so there is okay, let me bring this in here without going too deep in it. But you
can go as deep as you want.
When we go back to these ancient civilizations, if you heard about Lemuria or Atlantis, to me, it's like the Lemurians were using nature or natural structures to harness energy and in a more natural way. And Atlantean energy is a lot like there is structures, temples, potentially cathedrals, temples built on top that act as both as an anchor, but also as an amplifier of this energy. So you're completely right. They were built on purpose. And even in Christian times where, there was a lot of distortions, but also there were very secret and sacred societies within the Christian movements that held the knowledge and that were responsible also to pass it on. So all the Masons or the Templars, for example, a lot of the Templars, the Knight Templars built castles, cathedrals with the knowledge of the energy and the frequency and how these structures could be used to also help to pass on this knowledge.
Yeah. So how did you get into learning all of this? Was there, because I wanted to ask you, is there a book you read? Is there a teacher under whom you studied? You're so passionate about the travel, and I know Egypt, we're going to get to Egypt. You also just mentioned Lemuria, which of course, we've got a couple, crystals like this. And I was reading about that, and you and I talked in our email about Lake Louise, which is Archangel Michael's apparent temple, I guess people say, but underneath that is like a Lemurian mine of crystals or something about Lake Louise. And I don't know, but the etching on some crystals apparently is the barcode, if you will, of Lemurians. And so not every crystal has those things. I have one downstairs that does, just by happenstance, but that was kind of cool to listen to, and, how crystals and symbols and things play into what you're doing. But I started the question was, how did you learn what you've learned? What was your first step and why, I guess? You didn't just go to Egypt and look at a pyramid and say, I know everything now. Right?
Again, it comes back to parts, I guess, I just know. And I want to say is part of my creative process, and also the way how I curate my trips, is I sit and channel. So I receive information and then, go from there. But of course, I also do have a very analytical side. So I love to read books. I love to listen to audio history books. There was a time, and that was actually in my adolescent years, where I read the Bible from beginning to end because I just wanted to know what's in there.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there is a lot of books that you can find all of, now that you mentioned Metatron, all of the Melchizedek lineage, super great. There's 2 great books that are called The Ancient, let me get it. Oh no, I think I lent it to somebody. It's called The Ancient Symbol of the Flower of Life, something like that. I can send it to you and we can put the link. There's 2 volumes and there's a lot on symbolism. There's a lot on sacred geometry. So, there's different access points, I guess, for every brain side, how you want to approach these things.
That's a great point. Yeah, because not everybody approaches it from the same way. Yeah, the flower of life. So I wear this, it's called an intention necklace. It's wrapped with a tree of life. And there's pieces of paper that you put in here. The creators were on my show. They're friends of mine. But when I started, for example, I'll show this to you. My daughter went to Israel and she brought me back this symbol, right? Which is the tree of life, of course. But what do you see in it? Metatron's cube is in there. You can also overlay this with the flower of life. You could also overlay this with the Da Vinci's David, who it's all like Ankh, right? The Ankh, and then all of that stuff. So it's all connected. And of course, there's no accident when you're looking at all these things. But so for everybody,
it holds it all.
Right. So my avenue to all of this that I'm in now was my just taking yoga. I was a dancer and an athlete, and I didn't even know what yoga was back in 2001. Somebody just said, hey, come to my class. And through the yoga, this whole other world opened up, because how I learn is by physically doing something. Like, I couldn't sit down and read the Bible. If somebody wanted to show me how to do a workout to the Bible or do something physical and learn it would stick with me, right? So I loved that the yoga allowed me to embody the learning, which is how I teach through the chakras. I layer on yoga and music and all of the things, mudras and pranayama, that connect to chakras, because just what you said, we have to throw a lot of different noodles on the wall to see which one will stick with a person, because there's the thinkers, there's the doers, there's the breathers, there's the feelers, and that's how intuition works, right? So you just said when you are starting to think about a journey, it sounds like you get a download. So is that an intentional meditation that you say, okay, here I am, I want to make a trip, give it to me, right? How does that happen for you?
Yeah. And I just want to also comment on what you said. It's so true. And I feel, the accumulating of knowledge is a part how we can access things. But then the way, and you said the word embody, and the way that we get to live this as a lifestyle is through the body. It can enter through the mind, but it needs to be processed and integrated into the body. The process. Yes. So how it works for me is I also have my own ideas of where I want to travel or where I want to take people, but I never do this without permission. So I always communicate with the guides of a land. So in Egypt, for example, for the upcoming trip that I'm having in December, the Sphinx is one of my main guides, as she also is a deep portal into and a gatekeeper for the codes of the land. And so I will sit in meditation with her and ask for permission to bring people. And it's kind of like a co-creative process in the way of okay, what is the alchemy that is happening? What are the sites that we're visiting? And then it's a continuous process.
That's really cool. That's really fascinating. How lucky.
And then, of course, there's earthly things, like physical things, material things that need to happen and that need to manifest too. But oftentimes it is, that I'll just tell them, okay, if this is meant to happen, show me, bring me the people. And it happens.
Wow. So for that journey, for example, Egypt keeps coming up. I had my reading with you, and I've had other readings with people, and it's all connected. It all comes back to the Isis horns for me, Metatron's cube. I'm told I'm just super ancient planetary. Like, I have stake in the game of how the planet is built. And so I came back into this lifetime to, like you had said in your reading with me, like, be the way shower to help elevate consciousness on the planet, because I have stake in the game, because apparently I had a hand in making it. So I'm going to own that. And, just even hearing just layers like that. And to the people out there, they're like, oh, there she goes. She's getting all cray cray. But listen, my mom, rest her soul, had a statement, and I'm sure in your heritage, it comes up to similar. If one person calls you a jackass, it doesn't mean you're a jackass. If two people call you a jackass, doesn't mean you're a jackass. If three people call you a jackass, it's time to start looking for a tail. So enough people have told me the same things over and over again. And then, and I was going to bring this up because so remind my listeners, what reading did you offer while I was asleep? What is it called?
I call it angelic guidance and healing. And it's a technique, I would say, that is inspired by many energy modalities that I was trained in. But I ultimately connect to your energetic blueprint and to your guides, your higher self, and just bring forward what they have to tell you.
Yeah. And so because I'm such a doer and, a seeker of knowledge, hearing what you gave me in terms of, I have it all within me, and I don't necessarily need to look outside for guides, for example, although I can call on them when I need them. And then I get stuck because now I'm like, well, now what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like, I'm just supposed to sit here and just absorb everything. It's like, I've been trained when you meditate just to sit, obviously, and things will come. But now I don't know what to do because I'm like, I know that I'm connected. I know that I need to ground more in combination. And I know that I'm already all those things in this package called my body. So it's hard to get information sometimes. And I'm still in the, this just happened like 2 days ago. So you asked me how I was doing before we started. I'm doing fine, but I'm just trying to absorb and assimilate and embody the knowledge that you gave me to see how to work with it, I guess. Or the key might be to just not even try to work with anything and just let it come. But I get stuck in, well, what's the right question to ask? Or what's the name of the person I'm supposed to ask? And so it just made me giggle a little bit. Oh, there it is again. And now I have to really just do nothing.
Integration is an art in itself. And I think for everything that we do, whether this is we go on these trips and we have these expansive spiritual moments, or we have a reading or a session, and there's these informations that are coming through, and our human self has the mind has a tendency to go quickly. And it's like, okay, what do I make out of it? Like, okay, how can we use it? But it's just allowing this, because ultimately, again, it's frequency, it's energy. And you need to open to allow this frequency to permeate your cells. And that is happening with you not doing anything.
Right. And so I immediately searched for, when I meditate, sometimes I listen to sound frequencies that, I know the chakras have certain sound frequencies. And you had said the Pleiades, right? And so I was researching about Pleiadian frequencies to see if that's helpful when I meditate. And in your work and your experience, are there connections between galactic frequencies of any realm and the chakra frequencies within our bodies? And then do the chakra frequencies that we know that associate with root chakra, for example, wherever that is on the planet, which I'd like you to say, do the planetary chakras themselves carry that same frequency that you know of? Or is it a different frequency? I don't know.
Wow. Okay. There's many layers here.
That's what I do.
Yes. I love it.
Take your time. That was a lot.
Okay. How are we going to approach that? So
it's the connector of dots part of me.
Yes. I love it. The way that I have come to experience it, and this is my personal view, there might be other views around that, is that there is many ways how we can access the frequency of each chakra, and then also, the entirety of them all. So if you look at them, just there's the colors, there's also the musical notes, there is the rainbow, there's the places on the planet, and everything. Yeah, people listening, you might have heard the concept of the above and the below, the within, the without. So everything in the microcosm is the macrocosm. Everything of the macro is somewhere in the micro. And so, as a brief answer to your question, yes, of course, there is. Like everything is a mirror of something else on Earth, within our bodies, in the cosmos. Do I know all of them? No. And sometimes, like going back to also the work that I do in the readings or even in the circles, is I go about it very intuitively, and I try to go about it, being in tune with the rhythms of nature. And sometimes I receive information and then people ask me back, like, what is this about? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a messenger.
Yeah.
I don't know. But for the chakras, so we can definitely name the ones on the earth. Where these frequencies are located in the cosmos, I'm the wrong person to ask. So if anybody out there knows, please let us know. I would love to know about it. I have some notions.
Yeah. Because like who decided that the root chakra was, I don't know, is it 432 or whatever it is, megahertz? But then even just in looking for Palladian music, for example, unless you've been there, how do you know that's the frequency? And of course, then there's the trust, it's just the trusting. Somebody smarter than I am said, this is the tone in which you connect to this, that, and the other thing. And if I do enough research and there's 15 pieces of music that all have the same megahertz from 15 different people, okay, that's true, right? And so that's why I just wanted to sort of see, obviously your intuition is subjective, and that's what it is, right? Even when I teach, my listeners know by now, my students will say something about the class that I just taught. They liked this, they liked that. And I'll be like, I don't remember, because I just channel when I teach, not the whole time, but a lot of the time. And so in that way, when you're out and about doing the work that you're doing, the way you help people on that pilgrimage with you connect to that area, one year sounds like it might be a little different, even going to that same area with a different group of people another year. And that's a wonderful gift that you have, because you've got so much knowledge and so many ways to connect what you do to others. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And that's important what you mentioned, because I strongly believe, and I've seen it to be true, that the constellation that forms of the people who are signing up for that, it's another layering of, the pilgrimage or the travel that happens. And again, like everybody has a piece of the puzzle, a dot to connect for another person within the constellation.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you some business questions now, because you've been at this a while and you've got several episodes on YouTube. You've got your podcast. Today in the episode to which I was listening, you broke in and you're not alone. I've been seeing this more and more where people are saying, hey, if you want me to keep doing this on YouTube, please subscribe. So is there something happening now on YouTube that wasn't happening before is it just this realm that they're sort of, what are they doing to you on YouTube? Are they kicking you off? Are they making it harder for you to broadcast?
That's a great question. And again, I don't have the full spectrum to it, because probably I have not, dug deep enough into, they have great analytics. What I just feel that if you are, and I started off in March. So by the time that we are recording this, it's not even quite a year that I'm doing this, but it's hard for people to find you in a way. And I feel, when you are already big, it's easier and you have a lot more, like YouTube gives you a lot more freedom, or like ways how you can also then actually at one point earn money with it. But in order to reach certain thresholds, it's almost like, okay, how many like lifetimes do I need to do this because I'm not like YouTube is not my main focus. Like I have other work to do. It's a channel that I put the videos on there, but it's not my main. I'm not a YouTuber, you know?
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious because that sort of has been happening like the last couple of weeks, like people that I've been listening to, they're all kind of hopping on saying, hey, if you want me to keep doing this, subscribe. I'm like, well, I already subscribed. That's how I found you. But so I just didn't know if that was something going on. So in line with your business and your shows, I wanted to give you an opportunity to sort of talk about maybe a couple of your favorite guests that you've had and why, whether it's because they taught you something or you just really enjoyed the conversation, and what has been your biggest challenge since you've come online with stuff like this.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Overall, it was such a great idea and one of the best decisions to launch that podcast because it is bringing, like, every single conversation is bringing me so much joy. And it was also birthed on a personal pilgrimage of mine. So that's where I get these like big inspirations also for my business projects, let's say. The last one, I guess, that I really liked was with Jean Ang. And the reason is I had prepared for a conversation, and the whole interview went in a complete different direction from the very beginning. And this is, again, like one of these moments where I could stick to the plan or I could trust to spirit redirecting us and re-guiding us to somewhere else. And then I just asked him, like, during the conversation, hey, are you okay, like, with going down that route? And he was like, sure. And what I liked about it, it was the first time that we had a conversation about how sacred travel is more coming from the lensing of a facilitator versus a participant, which I believe is equally interesting for people because I see that there is more and more also spiritual teachers who themselves are being drawn to visit places and take people. But in my view, it takes a little more to just want to go, especially if you have places that are where the energies are really physical and can affect you in a very physical way. And so these different layers that can happen to you as a facilitator. So that I found very fascinating, how he was speaking into that from a very graceful perspective. And then I guess the conversations, it's the conversations that I enjoy most are the ones where either unexpected things happen or we talk about things where I discover something new.
Yeah. Okay. And now it's time for Joy on the Fives. So, Jullia, in this moment, what is bringing you the most joy?
This conversation and connecting the dots.
It's funny because before I introduced this segment, you just said something about joy. I'm like, oh, she's stepping into the segment now. And my listeners know now why I have this segment. So I'm not going to regurgitate it. I'll tell you offline. But the whole purpose of it in a nutshell is to inspire, to bring more joy into your day when you pause for it. So it's an intentional building of joy into this moment with you, which is bringing me a lot of joy. And you're doing so well. I feel, I knew just listening to you and enough on everything that you're doing and just having this reading with you, that this was going to go in such a nice, fun labyrinth way, right? Which it's meant to. And so I apologize if, I'm not hopping back to something that I said that I would. So if you catch me doing that, please stop me. In that way, I wanted to sort of keep talking about the chakras. And if, the earth chakras, have you visited each one? Because you sent me the master class, right? So it talked about the earth chakras and the ley lines, which is a whole other layer, and the grid lines and all that. So where have you been to and why? And where are you still planning to go to? Or do you not have a plan to visit them all?
That's a funny question. Do you have a plan? Well, no, I don't think that I have a plan, but I think I will know when it's time or when I receive the calling to go to each Yeah, one of them. So, okay, let's start at the base. So the base is in the USA. It's Mount Shasta in California. And again, because you mentioned these crystal deposits. So most of these sites, not just for the chakras, but actually also the major vortices, there is a large depository in the earth of either quartz or other crystals that have this ability to hold consciousness, basically, to hold information and to also act as a transmitter. So yeah, that's there. I haven't been there. I was supposed to go last summer, didn't happen. And again, with these things, like if it doesn't happen, it's fine. Like things align the way that they have to align. So that's okay. And then for the sacral, it's Lake Titicaca. So the sacral, we are in the feminine womb waters. It's a lake. It's a body of water. And that's in Peru on the border of Bolivia as well. I have not been yet. It's one of the strongest callings to go to Peru, but I have a feeling it's not going to happen this year. Yeah. Interesting place. A lot of also great sites around it, including a place that is called the Gateway of the Gods. So I just,
That's cool. I mean, I just got the chills a little bit when you said that. We're in, a numerological 9 year, right? And moving from the bold 8 to the introspective 9. And, you and I know the sacred feminine is all about water and just taking it a little easier and just really figuring stuff out from the feminine side, no matter your gender. And so I hope you get there this year. It would be a good year to go. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll see. It's the year of the serpent. We are moving from the year of the dragon into the year of the serpent. So lots of Kundalini activation.
Well, right. And actually that came up in the information you gave me. Do you remember what you sent me, or you don't remember once you sent it?
I remember partially.
Okay.
Yes. I remember that part.
The whole like crystalline snake image was fascinating to me. And I haven't practiced Kundalini yoga. And, every part of my body, literally, and everything that I'm hearing, it's all about get your body moving, dance, be like that. It's all about the sacral chakra. It's like you got to move and sway and move those hips around and move the energy around, take baths. I think that was one of the recommendations you had given me. But this whole idea of this crystalline snake, and of course it connects with the catechist and it connects with everything else. It inspired me to ask you, and we're going to get back to the chakras, I promise. There's 2 shows that I got into over COVID. They're both from Turkey. Have you been to Turkey?
I've been to Turkey, yes.
Have you seen The Gift, that show on Netflix?
No.
I'm going to send the information to you after we're done with this. And there's another show, also a Turkish series called Shamaran, which is about the snake woman. Have you seen that?
Oh, wow.
First of all, the people are beautiful. I mean, you would just want to watch it, subtitles or no, because they're gorgeous people in both of these shows. But literally, it's about this, these beings that they're snakes. They don't know necessarily that they are. And then all this stuff happens and then they sort of emerge. So it's like this big Kundalini awakening show, I guess. And I wanted to ask you if you'd seen it. Yeah.
So cool how these things are finding their way into mainstream.
Yes, because the gift, she goes to Bekli Tepe, is this, that's all about the gift. It's about timeline shifting and past lives and future lives, but it's all connected with this symbol that is a spiral with other things. And one of the images in the photo that you had sent me had like the spiral image in it.
The spiral.
I was like, there it is again, of course. So I'll send you that info.
Okay. Yes, please. That is so interesting because, the thing that they say about, when it comes to history, or also, how do you call the people that like dig these things up?
Archaeologists.
Thank you. Yeah. Slipped my mind.
I got you.
They say that Göbekli Tepe is actually one of the temples that could rewrite history in the way how things are being dated and predated. And so, it's gonna be a big one.
You'll love that show. All right, so moving up to solar plexus, where are we going?
We're going to go to the solar plexus. We are going to Australia, to Uluru. Ooh. So picture this giant red rock, in the desert with the sun, the solar consciousness being anchored in there.
Wow.
Haven't been there. I flew over this year. I don't think that counts. So it's
Counts
another
a little
thing.
bit.
A little bit. That's another place that I do have a very dear friend who lives in Australia, and she's done a couple of solo pilgrimages also there. So it's a lot in my field, but let's see. Eventually I can visit. Then moving further up into the heart, this is in England, in Glastonbury, also known as the ancient Isle of Avalon. So this is where all the portal opens into the Arthurian legend, into the divine union of the king and queen coming together, opening the heart. A lot of the Magdalene and Yeshua lineages also cross there. We have a Michael and a Mary line. So going back to Michael, Archangel Michael that you mentioned earlier, they cross right under a building that is called the Tor. It's a tower on a hill that looks like a dragon belly, again, like the womb space in a way. Very powerful. I've been there last year. I potentially also leading people there this year. It's not quite come together yet, so we'll see. But it's an interesting place to be. Yeah. And then from the heart, we're going into the throat, and this is Egypt. This is Giza Plateau with the three big pyramids, and there's actually even more pyramids around it that are not so popular. Yeah, but all of these, the sounding chambers, the transmitter of energy. Yeah. And Egypt is definitely, you will. Yeah. Egypt definitely opens a big portal into. And again, if you look at how the throat and the womb are connected, or the sacral are connected, how it opens the expression of your truth and the expression of, it's almost like speaking the world into creation.
I came across a woman, her name's Jullia, and she's a sound healer. And she made a post, and this is fascinating. And I know that the fifth chakra is connected to the second chakra, just in what I do. But I never visually saw the larynx and how it looks like the ovaries in the womb. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
And that was it was mind-blowing. I'm like, clearly we are made humans very purposefully. And we probably we're like this close to even understanding how we're made, right? Like we do our work and we think we get these little glimmers, of course, but we are intentionally built, I feel like, more and more as transmitters of energy. And we just need to figure that out. And just people call, beacons of light and all of that stuff. We are all light beings. And if we I'm talking to myself when I say this, just got out of our own way and just sat still and just really tuned into how we're made and who we are, we don't really have to even know why. We are just made this way for a reason. And I pray that we figure it out consciously so that we can really operate our systems more mindfully and intentionally and peacefully, because, we're all the same, right?
Yeah, we are all the same. Yeah.
I digress.
When you say that, the way that I like to explain it or describe it is a tuning fork. So, and while visiting different places or also being in connection with different people, you collect the codes. And then it's almost like your inner alchemical system. For myself, I feel it's mostly in the heart, but also solar plexus, transcribes, I don't know what's happening inside, but there's some alchemy happening inside. And then once you collect the codes, you become the walking embodiment and you emit these codes. So also when you have visited it doesn't have to be the chakras, like a sacred site, and then you get in contact with somebody who needs to collect the codes, doesn't necessarily have to visit, but can receive them through you.
Fascinating. All right. So third eye.
Third eye. And it's here that I want to mention Robert Kuhn, because actually most of the work that on the earth chakras goes back to him. He's also written a lot of books about it. Of course, he introduced this as a concept. So it's been there before, but he was the one really writing about it and also measuring it in the sense. And so he discovered that the third eye is the chakra that is flexible. It moves. Right now, it is in Shaftesbury, England, so very close to the heart chakra. And it is said that some say it's going to move to Brazil. Others say that it's going to move to, I'm not sure. Like it has to, I need to do a little bit more study in it. What I know is that it has to do with the precession of the equinoxes, and it kind of like moves by 12 degrees. But there's like a whole theory around that.
Wow.
But it's mutable.
Okay.
The energy is mutable. And the last one, the crown, is Mount Kailash. So that is in Tibet. I don't know if I will ever visit. It's actually, the Gene that we just spoke about earlier, who I mentioned, who was on my podcast, I think he has either planned a trip or did a trip there, but it's it's super high up, and it's quite an exhausting trip to go there. You need training, but you can look up pictures and the way also the clouds form around what I actually feel looks like a pyramid. I wouldn't be surprised if they discover that it's actually a pyramid. It looks like a UVO. It looks like out of this world.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you for taking us on a little tour with that.
Yay!
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to put that book in the show notes for sure. And is there anything else that you would like to highlight or discuss before we end our time together? You've been so generous with your time, and I would just want to thank you so much too.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been such joy and fun to talk about this.
Yeah.
No, I just feel that, whenever whoever is listening and you have a calling to either literally visit or just find out about a place, then do it. And, so many sites that are not labeled as a sacred site, but nature in itself is sacred. So it starts like with the tree in your backyard, and you can just, be outside and connect with the earth and with nature. And
yes, they're sacred sites to which we can travel, but truly just standing on the ground with the intention that the earth is sacred, wherever you are, is a sacred travel, right? And then you receive the energy intentionally. And if you're sitting in front of an ocean, you're going to a mountain. So it's all about intention. Tell people, please, how to find you, like your website and all your stuff.
Yeah, my website is soulwisdom.ch. And I'm on social media. Instagram is soul_wisdom_ Jullia. I guess you'll also put that in the show notes. And you can subscribe to my newsletter. I do have a free program. I just want to mention that briefly. That is actually all about integrating and cultivating that sacred lifestyle. So it's a lot of energetic practices that I have accumulated or cultivated over time that I have piled together into a free program that I feel is really valuable for people. And you learn how to program water and stuff like that. And then there's the travels. Go and check out if there's anything that interests you, and I'll be happy to take you along.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been lovely to have this amazing, illuminating conversation with you. I know we could probably do this again. We should. But thank you again for coming on and spending all this time with me here at The Real and the Woo. And have a wonderful day.